The Pittsburgh Pirates have looked to turn a new page as a baseball team. With the Pirates leading their division with more prospects on the way, how did the Pirates create this golden opportunity to become perennial playoff contenders? And just how did we get here? I mean, not that long ago, this team was the laughingstock of the MLB, with almost zero MLB level talent on the roster. Well, in November 2019, the Pirates made one of the best decisions in recent memory, the hiring of Ben Cherington. Cherington didn't exactly come in to make friends, with his first move being to trade franchise cornerstone Starling Marte for a pair of prospects from the Arizona Diamondbacks. Coming off his career best season, Marte's value was at its highest it could have been, and Cherington capitalized by grabbing Lodovar Peguero and Brendan Malone. Peguero's had an up-and-down path through the minors, but even still sits as the Pirates' number 6 overall prospect. Malone is a much more confusing case. Malone has only pitched in 27 innings since being drafted. However, once upon a time, he was viewed as a second overall pitching prospect in the Pirates system. As for Marte, he did go on to have consecutive great seasons after the trade, but his contract did end in 2021. I know recently the Pirates have been doing a better job of paying their players, but clearly they didn't see Marte as a part of their future and tried to capitalize on his stock when it was at the highest. Fast forward to the 2020 COVID draft season, where Cherington took most notably Nick Gonzalez, Carmen Mlodzinski, and Jared Jones, alongside Nick Garcia, Jack Hartman, and Logan Hoffman. Starting with Gonzalez, Cherington took him with the 7th overall pick, largely in part to his hit tool. Gonzalez was seen as the best collegiate bat at the time, and to some extent we have seen that in the minors. However, part of Gonzalez's development was slowed due to injuries. Mlodzinski was drafted as a starter, but has lost some of his merit due to his most likely move to the bullpen. Mlodzinski has struggled whenever it comes to control late in starts and has a limited pitch mix. And finally, Cherington found a gem in the second round in Jared Jones. Originally drafted as a two-way player, Jones has found his way as a full-time starter. A power pitcher by trait, his fastball sits around 96 to 99, also has a curveball, slider, and changeup, the only knock being that Jones lacks command, but as he has progressed to the minors, that command has improved. While the GM can have little impact in year one, let's take a look at how the Pirates finished in year one of Cherington's resume. Woof. That's bad. That must have been enough for Cherington to blow up the team. Cherington started his demolition path by trading first baseman Josh Bell for Will Crowe and Eddie Yean. This is the first real miss for Cherington. Crowe has since transitioned to the bullpen and has yet to really find success in the majors. For Eddie Yean, he seems to have fizzled out in the minors, being a 25-year-old at single A was not the expectation for him, but that is the reality. The next stop for his demolition path was the trade of Joe Musgrove. This is a weird one. Musgrove has grown into a Cy Young contender in the years following, but the return the Pirates got back was absurd. The Pirates received now All-Star closer Dave Bednar, top prospect Andy Rodriguez, as well as Hudson Heed, Omar Cruz, and Drake Fellows. It was a 3-team trade, but in the long run, the Pirates and Padres finished well ahead of the Mets. And around a week later, Cherington traded another starter, Jameson Taillon, and really prioritized MLB-ready guys. He grabbed Miguel Yair, Roansy Contreras, Michael Escado, and Cannon Smith and Jigba from the trade. With Yair no longer on the roster, and Contreras and Smith and Jigba struggling to make the transition to the majors, this trade is not looking good. After Yair tearing down the roster for younger talent, it was imperative to nail the draft to further solidify their farm system. The Pirates took an interesting approach that has seemed to have worked. By taking Henry Davis with the first pick, the Pirates saved some money that they later used to attract high school talent. With those later picks, they grabbed Anthony Solimento, Lonnie White Jr., and Bubba Chandler, the 9th, 12th, and 7th prospects in the Pirates system. Referring back to Davis, he got the call up to AAA and will battle Andy Rodriguez to be the catcher of the future. While unconventional, Davis hits really well for a catcher and has a really strong arm. Injuries have slowed him a little, but people are already calling his name with the current state of the Pirates catchers. Solimento is a lot less hype and more consistency. A 6'5 lefty who has a fastball, changeup, and slider who bases his game on control. Lonnie White Jr. is still in rookie ball and is so highly rated because of his potential as an athlete. White has already missed some time with injuries, and that unfortunately has resulted in some missed at-bats, which would be vital for him. And finally, possibly the most exciting of the later round picks is Bubba Chandler. Drafted as a two-way player, but has since focused solely on pitching. Chandler was drafted as a power pitcher with a 4-pitch mix, with really only one need, and that is to get his control under wraps in the coming years. A neat little tidbit about Chandler is that the Pirates had to lure him away from Clemson and being their next QB when drafting him. Fast forward to the 2021 trade deadline, where Ben Cherington made a cluster of moves. Here is where Cherington dealt then All-Star Adam Frazier. Cherington did well to capitalize on Frazier's stock at the time and got back Jack Sawinski, Tucupita Marcano, and Michelle Miliano. Both Sawinski and Marcano are mainstays on the current roster, with Jack playing at an all-star level this season. Adam Frazier, on the other hand, basically has fallen off the face of the earth, which in my opinion makes this one of Cherington's better trades. Whew, do I need to talk about this one? So yeah, Cherington sent Clay Holmes to the New York Yankees for Hoy Park, Diego Castillo, and Rob Brantley, none of which are still in the organization. And we all know what happens to Holmes. Holmes flipped a switch and basically became one of the best relievers in baseball almost the second the trade went through. The continued teardown of the roster led to the Pirates finishing at a casual 61-101 record, and after hitting an all-time low, it can only be up from here, right? Well, the Pirates had a relatively quiet offseason, with the only move being for Jose Quintana. That brings us to the draft, because realistically, nothing happened in that time frame. In Cherington's most recent draft, we saw him go a different route and grab a high school bat in the first round in Tamar Johnson. Johnson was seen to have the best hit tool of any high schooler and having a college-like approach. The Pirates have been aggressive with Johnson, already placing him in single A at the age of 19. For the next two picks, the Pirates went with a pair of collegiate pitchers in Thomas Harrington and Hunter Barco. Harrington was the safer of the two, already having good command and a 4-pitch mix, whereas Barco is coming off Tommy John surgery and is yet to pitch in the minors. Interestingly enough, he was assigned to AAA. I'm not sure if this was to get him close to those guys or if it was where the Pirates really value him. Other draftees include Jack Barrington out of Notre Dame, Michael Kennedy, and Trace Gonzalez. Moving forward to the 2022 trade deadline, we saw Cherington try to rectify his move of Holmes the previous season by grabbing Colin Holderman from the Mets. Holderman has been a staple of the back end of the Pirates bullpen this season. Meanwhile, they only gave up Daniel Vogelbach, who ended up being great for the Mets down the stretch, but has been abysmal so far this season. Cherington also flipped Jose Quintana and Chris Stratton for Johan Oviedo and Malcolm Nunez. I think a lot of people were surprised to see Oviedo being relatively solid so far this season for the Pirates, and Nunez currently sits as the Pirates' number 14 overall prospect. Meanwhile, Quintana is no longer with the Cardinals, and Stratton has been a solid reliever in both seasons. Fast forward to the end of the season, where the Pirates finished with a 62-100 record, which, by technicality, is improvement. But the following offseason would really set the foundation for the team's success in 2023. The offseason started with a trade for Ji-Man Choi, a career above-average hitter from the Tampa Bay Rays, in exchange for previously mentioned Jack Hartman at the 2020 draft. While Troy has spent most of his time on the DL, I still view this move as a positive one, even if it's just for my mentality about the team. Next, the team made the move for reliever Dory Moreta in exchange for Kevin Newman. When this move was first announced, I was really surprised to see a lot of backlash, but even at the time, I thought it released a clog for the current set of middle infielders to find time. And I couldn't have expected Moreta to turn into the player he has, but it's truly been a blessing to see the development he has made this season. I will say, Moreta is slightly overperforming if you look at his peripherals, but that still doesn't take away from the season that he has had. Next, Cherington grabbed a pair of free agents in first baseman Carlos Santana and Vince Velasquez. While Santana hasn't been the greatest player in the world, he has provided the team with a much-needed, consistent veteran leadership piece. And for Velasquez, I don't think many could have expected the season he was having before it was derailed by injuries. Then, the Pirates made another trade, which in my opinion was some of Cherington's finer work. The Pirates made the move for outfielder Connor Joe from the Rockies in exchange for Nick Garcia, also from that 2020 class. Joe, who is a rather unknown commodity, has since blossomed into an above-average hitter, as well as a good outfielder defensively. And for the first time in my life, the Pirates made another slew of moves, grabbing fan favorite Austin Hedges, Rich Hill, and Pittsburgh legend
number 22, Andrew McCutchen.
And that sort of leads us to where we are now. Over 2 months into the season, the Pirates sit atop the NL Central, and with many more prospects on the way. This team is taking shape to contend for the division crown for years to come.